Google and Kentucky's shady labor practices. The Supreme Court says Trump can't be removed from state ballots, and California's plan to house the mentally ill. Wait, I thought California already had a place they house the mentally ill. It's called California. And more on this week's America Uncovered headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chaffel. Kentucky's House Bill 500, which could soon receive a vote in the state's House of Representatives, would remove the requirement for employers to provide lunch breaks, rest breaks, and pay for time spent traveling to and from the job site during work hours. This is as reported by the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, a progressive think tank. The policy director says repealing these guardrails will make work more dangerous by depriving workers of time for food and rest, incentivizing them to travel too quickly to get to their job sites, and discouraging them from taking proper precautions at the beginning of the shift. HB 500 is sponsored by Kentucky House of Representatives member Philip Pratt, a business owner who operates a landscaping and lawn care company. Wait, you mean to tell me that a business owner would potentially support changing the rules so they can pay their employees less and make them work more? Why, that doesn't sound like any of the bosses I've had. Pratt also sponsored House Bill 255, which loosened Kentucky's child labor laws by allowing minors to work longer hours. Some feel this could lead to minors working in more hazardous professions. HB 255 passed in the Kentucky House and will go to a vote in the state Senate. Pratt defends HB 255 by explaining our current statutes and regulations unnecessarily restrict the number of hours needed to work, often preventing minors from seeking an opportunity to help them pay for college, learn new skills, and prepare for the future. Child labor is actually more of a complex issue than you may realize. We did a video on the seeming rise of child labor in America as of late. Check it out. Essentially, many think of child labor as 6-year-olds working in sweatshops. But child labor is also 17-year-olds working at the drive-thru. Many of these minors want to work more to save up for college, help their families, or just have more spending money. Something else to consider is the popularity of Minecraft, proving that kids do yearn for the mines. But no matter how you feel about child labor laws, I'm sure there's one thing we can all agree on. Employees definitely don't deserve to eat lunch. People are obviously only mad at Marie Antoinette for saying, let them eat cake, instead of don't let them eat at all. Speaking of workers' rights, Google fired all 43 members of a contracted YouTube music team based out of Austin. The team had previously gone on strike in February 2023 over Google cutting back on remote work and forcing workers to come into the office 3 days a week. When the team was laid off, they were demanding higher wages since some workers were making as little as $19 an hour with limited benefits and needed to get second jobs to support themselves. Meanwhile, Alphabet, Google and YouTube's parent company, is worth over $170 billion. I knew that because I Googled it. The team was fired while some of the members were lobbying for support at an Austin City Council meeting.
So to be supported by the City of Austin and also our allies in the labor community, give us the motivation to keep this fight going.
Not to interrupt, but they just laid us all off.
Oh.
Yeah, they just laid us all off.
I guess we just all
Our
got
jobs are ended today, effective immediately.
Wow.
Wow, that's how they found out they were fired by Google? I guess this proves that even Google doesn't like talking to people on Google Chat. The team unionized in April 2023, but Google refused to negotiate with them. Google argued that the company they contracted with, Cognizant, were the team's employers, not Google itself, and the workers should take up the dispute with them. However, the U.S. National Labor Relations Board determined Google is indeed their employer, and they violated U.S. labor laws by refusing to bargain with the union. But hey, why let facts get in the way of a narrative? Says Google, the biggest search engine on the planet. Facts are apparently especially unimportant on their AI Gemini, which makes history look like a Justin Trudeau Halloween party. We covered the story as well. Gemini has been temporarily shut down to address this issue. Google's CEO says, I know that some of its responses have offended our users and shown bias. To be clear, that's completely unacceptable and we got it wrong. Google presents itself as caring so much about the oppressed that its AI literally won't show white people. But when the working class unionizes to try and earn fair wages against an oppressive monolithic corporation, Google immediately fires all of them. That is a stunning lack of self-awareness at best and catastrophic levels of hypocrisy at worst. Hey Gemini, show me an image of how Google looks right now. Hey, looks like Gemini might finally be working. Speaking of unions, President Biden delivered the State of the Union address, which contained a number of what the Chicago Tribune calls combative attacks on a foe with no name. I'm going to take a wild guess that that foe's name starts with a T and ends with a rump. Just a guess. Republicans respond to the speech with House Speaker Mike Johnson calling it a campaign speech and a pretty vitriolic one. The State of the Union is a campaign speech during an election year? When has that ever happened before? Alabama Senator Katie Britt fought back against Biden in the Republican Party's official response, saying, "Right now the American dream has turned into a nightmare for so many." Biden's State of the Union covered Ukraine, the Israel-Gaza conflict, abortion, tax policy, gun control, and immigration, where he lashed out at Republicans for not passing the recent bipartisan border deal and foreign aid package. You know, Joe, between you and me, if this was a campaign speech, bringing up immigration might not have been the best move. And after the break, Nikki Haley wins. Sort of. Welcome back. Nikki Haley won the Washington, D.C. Republican primary. This makes her the first woman in history to win a GOP presidential primary. She celebrated this on X, posting, "It's time to start winning again and move our nation forward." Does she realize that winning again implies that there was winning going on before? And need I remind you, besides Trump, she also literally lost to none of the above in this presidential race. So finally winning a primary in a district, not even a state, when it's basically mathematically impossible for her to win, gives big celebrating like you won Olympic gold when you actually wound up in third place, behind none of the above vibes. But hey, she could have had a shot if she won Super Tuesday, which she did, securing the victory in Vermont. And nowhere else, losing every other state. Haley suspended her campaign, but has not endorsed Trump as the GOP presidential nominee, saying he needs to earn the votes of her supporters that didn't back him. She's ruled out running as the presidential nominee for a third party, No Labels, saying she won't be able to do what she would want to do with a Democratic vice president, which is part of the party's platform. And she called Donald Trump divisive. Of course, this is probably a boon to No Labels, since if Haley, who was already trounced by Trump, joined, they'd have to change their name from No Labels to No Chance. Speaking of Donald Trump, besides Colorado, Maine and Illinois have also tried removing Trump from the state's primary ballots. However, on Monday, the Supreme Court unanimously decided states can't remove candidates from the ballot. Yes, unanimously. It wasn't the predictable 6-3 decision. This one was 9-0. Which is wild, because when's the last time you heard 9 people unanimously agree on anything? Heck, you can't even get 5 dentists to agree on anything. There's always that one contrarian dentist. Probably thought that scam Willy Wonka immersive experience in Scotland was an avant-garde artistic masterpiece. Why are you like this, fifth dentist? In its ruling, the Supreme Court explains, because the Constitution makes Congress, rather than the states, responsible for enforcing Section 3 against all federal office holders and candidates, we reverse. Essentially, they're saying the enforcement of the insurrection clause in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, the justification states were using to disqualify Trump from the ballot, is a federal issue, not a state issue. And honestly, this is a good thing. Even if you don't like Trump, this is a dangerous precedent to set. What's to stop red states from barring Democratic candidates they don't like? We'd wind up in a situation where the president ends up being someone barely anyone likes. So, not that different from what we have now. But at least we still feel like we have a say in the matter. Kind of. And with this ruling coming the day before Super Tuesday, it ensured Trump was on all the ballots, and his distant lead over Haley got even distantier. Speaking of Trump and the Supreme Court announced it will hear arguments on whether or not Trump is immune from federal prosecution in his election interference case on April 25th. This upset many, as it could delay his trial start date until close to the election or even after it. Some people worry that Trump is a criminal and/or a traitor, and if he isn't convicted before the election and he wins, he could pardon himself. Of course, these folks aren't worried about how it looks saying the justice system needs to rush a foregone conclusion to disqualify a candidate they don't like. What's wrong with a kangaroo court? That sounds adorable. Just imagine the kangaroo judge keeping the gavel in its little pouch. If anything, I say we should have more kangaroo courts. Others are worried that the Justice Department is trying to rush these cases specifically to hurt Trump's chances in the election, or even prevent him from being eligible. But I think the thing everyone should be most worried about is the fact that, according to a recent AP poll, nearly 6 out of 10 Americans worry that neither Biden nor Trump have the mental capabilities to effectively lead due to their ages. This is shocking. Only 6 out of 10 feel that way? You see, you can't really ever get more than 6 people to agree on anything. Honestly, though, constantly accusing Trump of committing all these complex illegal acts is just making him seem more and more mentally capable. And with another of Trump's former business associates, this time Trump's former CFO, Alan Weisselberg, pleading guilty to perjury, this all just makes Trump seem like a mob boss, orchestrating several complex schemes simultaneously, while Biden, yeah, you get it. Trump, the mob boss, seems way less likely to constantly forget about it. If you want to stop Trump from running, you should drop every case against him and say, there's no way a feeble old man could have pulled any of this off. He's not as sharp as Biden, who has his own TikTok. Only geniuses can use TikTok. Case in point. Yep, this is the only orange person I trust to lead this nation. And after the break, more bad news. Welcome back. The U.S. Who cares? Why do I even bother? The bad news never ends, and me making people aware of it doesn't change anything. I've been complaining for literally years about how disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has yet to even be questioned over his policies that likely resulted in several deaths in nursing homes. I appreciate you all watching, but I just can't do this anymore. This will be the last episode of America. What's that, Shelley? The House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic issued a subpoena to disgraced former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to question him over his policies that likely resulted in several deaths in nursing homes? I did this. I am making a difference. The secret works. I'm not leaving. America Uncovered is here to stay. Now that we're all in such a good mood, let's talk about Israel and Hamas. Israel and Hamas are negotiating over terms of a 6-week ceasefire that would last through Ramadan, but the Hamas delegation has left the talks until next week. Israel is facing a lot of pressure to accept a ceasefire deal, with Vice President Kamala Harris criticizing Israel for not doing enough to mitigate the growing humanitarian crisis. She also called for Hamas to release their hostages and accept a ceasefire. It's fitting that she's speaking out against this situation that involves hostages, because if anyone knows anything about unjustly detaining people against their will, it's Kamala Harris. Speaking of people being locked up, Oregon lawmakers passed a bill that would roll back the state's decriminalization of possessing small amounts of hard drugs. The bill is awaiting signing by Oregon Governor Tina Kotek. Oregon Democratic Senate Majority Leader Kate Lieber says, "With this bill, we are doubling down on our commitment to make sure Oregonians have access to the treatment and care they need," which is a nice sentiment. Except expanding access to treatment is what they said they were doing 4 years ago when they decriminalized the drugs. This is like watching your house burn to the ground and saying, "I'm doubling down on my commitment to invest in smoke detectors." In 2020, Oregon voters passed ballot measure 110, making Oregon the first state to decriminalize possession of small amounts of drugs like heroin, crack, and meth. Instead of jail time, people would receive a $100 fine and be assessed to see if they need addiction treatment. As part of this measure, hundreds of millions of dollars from marijuana tax revenue was supposed to be put into drug treatment programs. But Oregon was as reliable as a dog left unguarded around dumplings. In a 2023 audit, Oregon ranked 50th in the U.S. for providing access to addiction treatment. That's 50th out of 50, by the way, in case your math isn't good. Or if you live in Oregon and your math is too good. Oregon is also dealing with an overdose epidemic, with fentanyl overdose deaths increasing 1,500% since before the pandemic. The state commissar has declared a state of emergency in Portland. Funny, I thought there was already a state of emergency in Portland. It's called being Portland. So Oregon tried a new approach to a problem. It got a lot worse, and now they're reversing course back to the old way, which wasn't working, saying it's to fix the problem that they made worse. This is like seeing a raging grease fire and saying, "Good news, I've decided to stop throwing whiskey into the flames. I'm sure this fire will get better now, soon as I double down on my commitment to invest in smoke detectors." I want to believe changing course will make a difference, but history has shown Oregon to be out to lunch on these issues. Out to lunch? Maybe that Kentucky lawmaker has a point after all. And in my ongoing attempt to talk about things YouTube considers too controversial by hiding it in gaming content, check out this video about totalitarian regimes and who the real good guy and bad guy is, according to Dune, the 1992 MS-DOS game, and the movie. An America Uncovered wouldn't exist without your support. Click that orange button to support us on Patreon. All it takes is $1 an episode, and you can set a monthly limit. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.